Welcome to the English Out Loud podcast, where I give you all the tips that you need to take your English to another level. My name is Pat, and I teach people how they can speak more like me. I teach people how they can just pick up all sorts of things by listening to Americans, focusing, and overall just developing those skills to make your English more coherent, quicker, more fluid, just getting that natural sound that you work so hard for. Because everybody studied so hard in school. You studied and studied and studied. And what was it for? Was it for nothing? I hope not. Was it to just be able to use English when you travel? Maybe so. But if you want more than that out of your English, if you want to use it for work, if you want to use it to maybe make friends, if you want to use it for all sorts of things, I've got the information that you need to know. Now, a few episodes ago, I had a great chat on numbers. I talked all about numbers. I had some fantastic suggestions on how you can communicate a phone number, for example. And believe me, it is something that is worth your time to understand. Because if you know how to communicate a number effectively, well, then you're going to be communicating important information. So if you haven't heard the original numbers episode, I suggest after this one, enjoy this one here. Like, we're here, don't go anywhere, we're here, just stay. But if you haven't heard it after, go and listen to that one, because it'll just take your numbers to a whole other level. But today, we are going to discuss various other things of numbers. Now, I'm talking number pronunciation tips, a few more of those. Last time I had some good number pronunciation tips of, the number 20, and how we don't want to say 20, but we want to say 20. And also how we don't want to say 1,000 when we're talking about money, but we want to say $1,000. Anyway, you can check out that. I'm not going to go over all of that again. I got a new pronunciation tip on numbers today that is going to be useful. We'll talk about how you can communicate years. That's a good one. Don't you want to know how you can tell somebody what year it is effectively? Pretty good. And also a tip for how to leave a tip. That's important, because leaving a tip in the American culture is essential. It is a custom that you don't want to break, because you may really offend people who are doing a good job and working hard. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Now, the first thing that I want to get out of the way, because this number is probably going to come up at some point today, is the number 100. Or honestly, the number 100 in general. Notice in there, now you may have noticed in the past, but I'm not pronouncing that D. I'm not going 100, but 100. We do this because it's quicker. It's too much work to pronounce every letter in the word individually, and so we just mush them together to make a dr kind of sound. 100, 100, 200, 300, drid. Get a feel for that one. Start practicing it right now. Right now. Don't wait till later. You'll forget. You're going to procrastinate, and you will totally forget. Everybody forgets. I forget stuff all the time. So just right now, say it. 100. There you go. You got it. You probably got it. Maybe you didn't get it, but keep practicing it, because you probably didn't really get it. So keep on practicing it, keep on listening, and you will get it in no time. So, pronunciation tip of the day, 100, dr. Practice that. Focus on it. It's important. It's particularly important if you want to sound fluid when you're speaking. You know, if you just Want to have everything flowing out? Use that. Anyway, let's get into some other stuff. Now, when we're talking about numbers, of course, as I've mentioned in the past, numbers, money. What kind of numbers do we use when we're talking about money? Well, one that I can tell you is a 2-for-1 discount. You ever heard of that? It sounds like three numbers, 2 for 1. 2 for 1. Well, you're getting two of something for the price of one. 2 for 1. Some people will even just say it was a twofer. A twofer. Maybe that's just a Canadian thing. I don't know. But 2 for 1. It was a 2-for-1 deal. Walmart has those all the time. 2 for 1. So that's a good one. Another kind of deal. Now, this is not a good deal. Well, it's not a moral deal. It's actually a fantastic deal for the person who does it, but it's not very morally correct. It is a 5-finger discount. 5-finger discount means that you stole something. Now me, I have worked for quite some time catching thieves all through Toronto. And I don't condone theft in any way whatsoever. However, people truly do steal things. Often, people that you wouldn't even expect steal things. They just do it. And so a good word for something obtained through theft, or well, kind of a silly word for it, is it's a 5-finger discount. As in, you used all 5 fingers of your hand to steal something and get it for free. A 5-finger discount. So one time, while I was working security in a pharmacy in Toronto, you see, I used to have this great job where I would follow people in stores. I was dressed in regular clothes. I would see people stealing things, and then I would catch them, and then I'd call the police. It honestly was a pretty fun job, and you get to learn a lot about people. Well, this one time working in a pharmacy in Toronto, I busted this guy trying to get himself a 5-finger discount on some O. Henry chocolates. He was a young adult man, maybe in his late 20s, early 30s, and this guy had a sweet tooth. I followed him through the store like a cat stalking its prey. You see, I had spent so many hours in this store, working, following people, that I knew this store so well, and I could keep an eye on any suspicious-looking person in the store for the entire time that they were there, and they wouldn't even notice me. Folks, this is just a quick message to remind you to subscribe to the Accent Training Podcast. If you haven't already, you don't want to miss a second of this accent training experience, and you want to be updated whenever I've got new content out for you. So if you haven't subscribed, hit subscribe now. Either that, or everyone just thought I was some crazy person who spent his days sneaking around the pharmacy. I don't know. It could have been either. But nobody said anything. Well, either way, this guy did not see me. But he knew he was guilty. So you see, I waited for him outside of the doors. I saw he didn't pay for his chocolates. And the second I confronted him, I told him I was the store security, he pushed me back and he ran. He bolted down the street as fast as he could. Now, I was in pretty good shape at the time, a little bit better than I am right now. And I loved a good run. So I chased him. I caught him by the back of his sweater, and I pulled him back towards me to face justice. But justice would not find him on this day. He slipped out of his sweater. He slipped it over his head, kicked his shoes off, and ran away in the park like a madman. Like I said, he had a sweet tooth. Shoes and a sweater meant nothing to him so long as he got his 5-finger discount on O. Henry chocolates. Now, what else do we got on numbers for today? Well, I'll tell you a little something about numbers that we in North America have very strong feelings towards. You could say that it's superstition, but either way, these numbers are very meaningful to us in one way or another. First of all, the number 1. You see, we all want to be number 1. We can't all be number 1, but we all want to be number 1 in America. If you have what it takes to become number 1 in anything, feel free to boast about it. Tell the world, I'm number 1. You can put it on your Twitter. You can put it on your car, number 1 guy or gal. So you see, these are prideful words. Americans honestly do respect somebody who is the number 1 in their field. The number 1. This is the number 1 surgeon in their field. Or you could even say this is the number 1 bowler in Wisconsin. Either way, it's pretty impressive to be number 1. I mean, it's definitely way better to, be a number 1 surgeon than a number 1 bowler. But hey, in America, we recognize that number 1 has worked hard to get their position. So if you're number 1, let Americans know. They look up to the number 1 of anything. If you're a number 1 nurse, let people know I'm the number 1 nurse. Number 1 in your class. The number 1 driver. The number 1 sandwich maker. The number 1 anything. If you're the best at it, have some pride in that. Let people know. Another number that's important for Americans is the number 7. It's our lucky number. It's often even referred to as the lucky number 7. I believe that this comes from the prevalence of the number 7 in the Bible. It's all over the place in there. The Bible is full of the number 7. And so, the number 7 is the favorite number of many Americans, and it's considered a lucky number. You'll see this in casinos, actually. If you are ever in Las Vegas playing on some slot machines, number 7, if you get 3 7s in a row, that is a winning number. That is a winning thing. 7, very lucky number. However, an unlucky number for us is the number 13. 13, very unlucky number. As a matter of fact, I've lived in apartment buildings that did not have a 13th floor. Now you're saying, okay, so there were 12 floors in the apartment building? Oh no, there were 20 floors in the apartment building, but there was no number 13. The floors went 11, 12, 14, as if they were tricking us, because people are silly. People are goofy. And so nobody wants to live on the 13th floor of the apartment building. And that is a forbidden number. Honest. I can't speak for every apartment building across the United States, but if you live in an older, maybe a building that looks a little bit older, take a look on an elevator. Or if you're traveling in the United States sometime and you see the elevator in the building, take a look. There might not be a floor number 13. People consider it unlucky. Nobody would want to live on the 13th floor. So those are some numbers that we feel strongly towards. The American culture is funny. But think about your own culture. Maybe there are some numbers that are important in your own culture. For example, I've heard that there are particular numbers in the Chinese culture, which are also considered unlucky, or others which are considered to be lucky. So, I think numbers must have some significant importance in, life. Let's keep on talking about them then now. How about years? You ever struggle trying to tell what year it is? Do you ever end up saying, I was born in the year 1985. Did you hear that? 100? 985. Did you ever say that? Well, stop saying that because it takes way too long. Takes way too long. Here's how you want to say it. 1985. 1985. That's it. We just want to read out two numbers. That's the easy way to do it. Let's start all the way back with 1985. Now, you can say 1985, and that's fine. But suppose that you wanted to say from 1980 to 1989. What would you say? You would have to say the 80s. You hear that? So we don't want to just say from the year 1980 until 1985. No, that'll take forever. Through the 80s. That's it. 3 words. Through the 80s. And you can use this for every decade from the 1920s up until the 1990s. In the 20s, they call them the Roaring 20s. The 40s, the 50s, the 60s. All of these just go by that simple, quick name, the decade. So those are a couple quick tips to keep in mind for those words. Now suppose that you just want to say one particular year and you don't want to say 1983. You can actually just say 83. Or instead of saying this person was born in 1995. No, you could just say born in 95. They were born in 95. That's it. When we're referring to those years and we just say, a 2-digit number, back in 45 or in 63, when you just say that, it's implied that you're referring to the previous century, that you're referring to the 1900s. Now we're up to the year 2000, because we've talked about 70s, 80s, 90s, and then, born in 95, I did this in 99. Now we're at 2000. Well, 2000, you just want to say 2000. You could call it the millennium. Some people call it that still, but you just say 2000. However, if you want to say 2001, again, so many syllables, 2001. No, you just say 01, 01. Or 2002, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, 08, 09. Now, of course, we don't say 010, but what we do say is 2010, and then 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, until we get closer to today's date at 2020. Now, this also goes to say that when we refer to the entire decade of 2010 until 2020, what do you suppose we're going to call that? We're going to call it the 2010s. The 2010s. Funny name, but that's what we're giving it. 2010s. It's already out there. These are the 2020s. Next up, 2030s. Let's see how those go. Well, we've got a good, decade ahead of us. I'm sure things will brighten up. Sun's just around the corner. So, keep an eye out for that. You still got another 2 months of saying 2020. And then you can get right into 2021. And if anybody's listening to this in 2021 or at a later date, then just take a moment to appreciate the 20s that you can repeat to yourself right now. Enjoy that. Because that is, as I've mentioned in the past, practicing that silent T. We're not saying 20, but 20. So now we're up to 2020. What comes next? Well, if you were to write today's date is November 2nd is today's date. November 2nd, 2020. And so, if today's date is November 2nd, 2020, how would I write that? How would an American write that? For me, I'm a Canadian. I kind of write it a little differently. But how would an American write that? Well, Americans write it like this, in this order. When we're just writing the numbers, we're not writing the words, no NOV, none of that. We want to go first month, then the day, then the year. Now, this is important because in other cultures, even other English-speaking cultures, like I said, in Canada and in Britain, you would write today's date 02/11/2020. However, in the United States, we kind of like to write it the way that we say it. We would write 11/02/2020. That is how you can communicate the date. You could even actually just write 11/02/20. That way, again, we're saving numbers. Why write extra numbers that you don't need? 20. That's it. Leave it at that. People aren't going to think, whoa, this is from the year 20. In the year 20, they didn't know it was the year 20. Of course they didn't know it was the year 20. Nobody was saying it's the year 20 because what would they have thought? What was the year before that? Well, it was the year 19. And the year before that, 18. And then this guy's standing there thinking, I'm 35. And it's the year 20. What happened? Anyway. Like I said, keep in mind, this is mainly a rule for the United States. In Canada, you'll see it differently. If you travel to Europe, differently. All over the world. But when you're doing business with Americans, writing emails to Americans, any kind of communication, filling out your form when you are entering the country, possibly, you want to write the date in this way. This is essential. Month, day, year. Write your dates like that. There will be no confusion from this point on. Month, day, year. Okay, I've got one more tip for you today. I've got a tip on how you can leave a tip. What? A tip on leaving a tip. Well, what is a tip? I give tips. Like I said, I'm giving a tip. But the tips that I give, these are pieces of advice. Tips for you to improve. Advice. But there's another meaning of tip that we want to consider. A tip is an extra amount of money that you pay for a service. What? Extra money? Why pay extra money? Aren't people doing their jobs? Well, back in the Depression, as I mentioned, about the 1930s, in the Depression, restaurants couldn't pay their staff enough. And so, people working in restaurants and serving received lower wages. But those who came to the restaurant were expected to pay a tip, which is something to say, hey, good job for working. This allowed servers, or service people in general, to get higher wages, and now they could afford, food and rent and afford to live in the city and keep on working. However, the Depression ended, and restaurants did not raise the amount of money that waiters were being paid. They didn't put it back up to a living wage. They kept it below minimum wage. And this is actually permitted by governments. Waiters and waitresses in the United States and in Canada, I don't know about other countries, really aren't paid that much money by the hour. But that's the thing. That's the money that they make by the hour. Maybe $6, $7 an hour the restaurant pays them. But the real money that they get is for their good service. Having a smile. If they do a good job with a big smile on their face, they can make $500 a night in some restaurants. $700 a night is what I hear some bartenders make. So, tips really benefit them. They really do. They don't make a lot of money from the restaurant. However, if they work hard, they can get a pretty penny. This goes to say that if a waiter comes, if you sit down at a table and a waiter comes and lets you check, maybe taste a couple of wines before your dinner, pours the glass for you, does some, nice things, brings you some hot bread. Of course, these are parts of their job, but when they do it to excellency, they are working to make your experience more pleasurable. They want a tip. And so, a customary tip, if someone's doing a good job, and you say, okay, you're doing a good job, I'll leave some money. Customary tip is 15% of your bill. 15%. So you take, if your bill is $100, then you leave an extra $15 as a tip. If your bill is $10, whatever, leave 50 cents. It's not a big deal. They don't care, okay? $1.50, 50 cents. They're not bugging you about that. But when you have a $100 bill, that's pretty good. You've had them working. They've been giving you excellent service, most likely. And so, you want to tip $15 on that. That shows good. For the fellas listening, if you take a girl out on a date and you tip 15%, she's looking at that like, oh, okay, this guy's got some money to spend. All right. Girls don't mind seeing that, I guess. He's generous, isn't he? And for the ladies out there, again, a guy who tips big, well, he's got a little cash in the pocket, doesn't he? And so, the point is, leave a tip. Tip your waiters. In Toronto, it is also customary to tip taxi drivers. And I'll tell you what, I hate this. I hate tipping taxi drivers. I understand many people, they do work hard. They're driving around all day. But it's that I don't often get good service from them. They're often trying to take a longer way to make me pay more money. Maybe the car smells bad, or maybe they do something to just bother me. And then at the end, they say, oh, please remember to leave me a tip. And I say, are you crazy, buddy? You want a tip? After I had to deal with all of this? No, I'll only leave a 10% tip. Only 10% tip for bad service. That's what I leave for that. 5% if it's a really smelly taxi and if they play music that I don't like. Then a 5% tip. But tipping is customary. So, when you're traveling around, I understand that in some cultures, tipping is not heard of. Tipping isn't something that you do. You just wouldn't think about it. Why would you pay someone more money for doing their job? But the fact is, we're paying them more money because the restaurant isn't paying them enough money. And why isn't the restaurant paying them enough money? Because they're paying somebody money that, so that we don't think about it, so that we just get used to tipping. But don't worry about that. The fact is, when you travel around, tipping is expected. And so if you see this at some point in your life, just remember 15% is customary. 10% is pretty good. It's okay if it's like, if the service isn't great, but you're like, they're working, they're doing their job. Okay, 10%, whatever. And if you really want to show off, 20, 25%. Hey, I hear there was a prince of Saudi, well, there is a prince of Saudi Arabia. There are so many princes of Saudi Arabia, but one in particular tipped $50,000 in, I think it was somewhere in Spain. $50,000 tip. Like enough of a tip that she could quit her job. Now, it's not expected that you leave a tip that big, but he must have really been trying to impress his date. We've got to wrap the show up now. I have things to get to. It's rather late. It's about 10:30 p.m. and I've still got some dishes to wash. Because I'm a clean kitchen kind of guy. I enjoy cooking. I enjoy having a clean kitchen so that I can just walk in there, grab some veggies, chop them up, fry them up, or bake them, or do whatever I want. Sometimes just take them raw and dip them in some dip. And I eat them. And I like having the ability to do that in a clean kitchen, so I have to maintain my living area. I hope that you picked up on some things for today. Let's take a look at what we've covered. The word hundred, 100, 200, $300, hundred, jur. Keep an ear open for that. You'll develop it in no time. Like I said, you may not get it right away. That's okay. Practice it. 100. Another thing is the 5-finger discount. 5-finger discount, don't even go for it. 5-finger discount, it's too good to be true. You're going to get busted. Guy like me is watching out for you. Go for the 2-for-1 deal on the O. Henry chocolates. 2-for-1 is the same thing as stealing one, except you got to buy one. So you're buying one, and then you can pretend that you're stealing the other. But I want to see that you paid. If I see that you paid, and like I said, somebody's watching. If they see that you paid, no problem. No problem. 2-for-1 deal, no problem. 5-finger discount, big problem. All right. Numbers 7, number 1, and 13 are particularly special numbers for American people, so keep an ear open for those. And be sensitive to our feelings. Like I said, if you're number 1 on something, get out there and be number 1. If you're a number 1 chess player or a number 1 astrophysicist or a number 1 shoe cleaner or a number 1 nurse, do your thing and enjoy it. And let people know, I'm the number 1 nurse in my field. Believe me, it means a lot to Americans to hear that. They really look up to a number 1. Number 7, very lucky number for American people, very lucky number. And number 13, a very unlucky number. We have some years, everything from the 20s to the 80s to the 90s to the 2010s and the 2020s. Keep an ear open for those and be careful how you write them down. We want the month, the day, and the year if you're writing those down for Americans. Very important to do it in this manner. Trust me, it'll save you some time. It'll save you some time and trouble if you just write the year this way. It'll save confusion. Just go for it. And my tip for how you can leave a tip is 15%, 10% if it's just kind of bleh service, 5% if you are a little bit insulted by the service, and nothing if the food's cold and the waiter's got a bad attitude and everything's bad, nothing. Otherwise, a tip is customary or you may insult somebody. Well, I hope that you've been able to take something away from this here today. I have most certainly had a lot of fun putting this together. I know that last week I didn't release anything, but this week I got a couple of good things coming. And, well, you know, I've just got to take time off every now and then to take a look at things and see how I can develop it further. But I will most certainly soon be coming up with a regular schedule on when I'll be releasing these podcast episodes. At the moment, they're kind of sporadic. Sometimes you get it on a Monday, Tuesday, Friday evening, Sunday morning. Goodness knows when these things are coming out. I'll get it under control. I'm working on it. But these are going to keep on coming, so don't give up on me because I'm just figuring things out here. Anyway, have a wonderful day. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. I've most certainly been having a good time. I've got this really nice diffuser. A diffuser is something that you put water and these nice smelling oils into. And I just put it there because it really picks me up. I like the smell of, the nice oils. I got some like black pepper and, what else did I put? Black pepper anyway. It's not making me sneeze. I thought it was going to make me sneeze. But it actually kind of picks me up. Picks me up a little bit. It's got some lime in there as well. Anyway, that's besides the point. The point is, keep practicing your English because you're going to reach whatever goals you have, as long as you try. So, keep up the good work. Have a good day.